My own brother, a cop, pulled me over and held a gun to my face while I was on an emergency mission. He barked, "You think your badge makes you special?" But when his captain rushed up and saw me cuffed, he stuttered. "Ma'am, Director of the FBI." "Hey, Reddit. My name is Elise Morgan, and I'm the current Director of the FBI." It still feels surreal to say that out loud sometimes. Not because I didn't work for it. God knows I clawed my way up through years of bureaucracy, filled danger, and cold condescending rooms filled with men who didn't think I belonged, but because the journey to get here was anything but straight. I didn't grow up with privilege or political connections. I grew up in a small town where ambition in a girl was either laughed off or crushed early. My mother was a nurse. My father worked construction until he drank himself out of every job he held. I was the bookworm, the straight-A student, the overachiever everyone rolled their eyes at, especially my older brother, Brandon. He and I were only 2 years apart, but, emotionally, we were from different worlds. Brandon was the golden boy, varsity football, always surrounded by girls and cheap beer. He coasted through high school on charm and small-town good looks while I studied in the garage because the kitchen was always too loud. We were never close, but we were family, or so I thought. I left home at 18 with a scholarship and a suitcase. Brandon stayed behind and joined the local police force a few years later, not because he wanted to serve and protect, but because, in his words, it came with a badge, a gun, and free parking. I rose through the ranks, first as an analyst, then field agent, then special ops liaison. By the time I was 35, I was overseeing high-level domestic threat response teams. By 41, I was the first woman in 2 decades to be appointed FBI director. And not once did Brandon ever congratulate me. In fact, the last time I saw him was at our mother's funeral. He showed up an hour late, didn't speak at the service, and left after 15 minutes. No hug. No words. Just a nod in my direction before disappearing like he hadn't been part of my bloodline. So when I found myself pulled over by a patrol car on a deserted back road just outside of the state border, I wasn't expecting him. It was late, around 11:40 p.m., and I was en route to a secure airfield for a covert flight related to an internal intel leak we were investigating. I was dressed in civilian clothes, driving a black unmarked SUV with clearance tags on the inside. No. Just me. When the red and blue lights hit my rearview mirror, I didn't panic. I slowed down and pulled over, assuming it was a routine check. That illusion shattered the second I heard the aggressive bark from the patrol car step out of the vehicle, hands where I can see them. Now. I froze. That voice. I knew that voice. I opened the door slowly, stepped out, and turned, and sure enough, there he was. Officer Brandon Morgan. My brother. The man I once built blanket forts with. The man who didn't call when I got promoted to director of the FBI. Now holding a gun 6 feet from my face, I raised my hands calmly. "Brandon, it's me, Elise." He blinked. There was a flicker of recognition, and then it hardened into something colder. "Oh, I know who you are," he spat. "Doesn't mean you get a free pass." "What's the stop for?" I asked, voice even. "You were driving suspiciously. Fast. Out-of-state plates. I ran your tags, blacklisted. That stopped me cold. My vehicle is registered to a secure federal fleet." "Yeah. Well," he said, circling me. "Around here, we don't take kindly to federal hotshots flashing their little badges and thinking they're above the law. Brandon, I'm on a classified mission." He didn't let me finish. He grabbed my wrist, yanked my arms behind my back, and slapped the cuffs on. Tight. Deliberate. "This is for all the times you looked down on us," he muttered. "You think you're better? Smarter. Guess what, Elise? Out here, you're not special." I didn't flinch. I didn't scream. I just said quietly, "You're making a very serious mistake." He leaned close. "You always thought you were too good for this town. Now you're gonna learn what real authority looks like." He walked me back to his squad car like I was a criminal, and I let him because I knew what was coming. I asked calmly, "Did you alert dispatch?" "Already did." "Backup's on the way," he said proudly. "Good," I replied. "I'll wait." 10 minutes later, a second cruiser pulled up. The door opened. Captain Reed Wells stepped out, one of the senior officers I'd met briefly during a joint task force years ago. He walked toward us, clipboard in hand. "All right. What's the situation here?" And then he saw me, handcuffed, standing beside Brandon. His eyes widened like he'd seen a ghost. "Director Morgan." Brandon turned confused. "Wait. What?" Wells dropped the clipboard. "What the hell is going on? Why is she in cuffs?" Brandon looked between us. "You know her." Reed's face turned to stone. "Brandon, that's Elise Morgan, director of the FBI. Your sister." The silence that followed was deafening. My brother turned pale. He opened his mouth to say something but couldn't get the words out. I turned to Wells. "I've been unlawfully detained, cuffed, and had a weapon drawn on me while on a sanctioned national security mission." Wells was already pulling out his radio. "We'll fix this right now." I shook my head. "No. Let him uncuff me." Wells hesitated, then turned to Brandon and snapped, "Take the cuffs off." "No." Brandon moved like his hands were made of cement. His face was flushed, jaw tight, eyes darting. He unlocked the cuffs with trembling fingers. I looked him dead in the eye. "You're lucky I'm the one you pulled overnight. Anyone else in my shoes? You'd be on the news by morning." I didn't yell, didn't threaten. I just said one final thing before walking away. "You're not the law, Brandon. You're just a man with a badge and a very fragile ego." Then I got back in my SUV and drove away. My mission still ahead, but a very different fire burning behind my ribs. Because this wasn't just about a traffic stop. This was about years of resentment, about a brother who never wanted to see his sister succeed, and who now had to live with the fact that the woman he tried to humiliate in front of his entire department outranked every badge on his belt. I didn't cry on the drive back to the airfield, not when I unclenched my fingers and saw the red angry marks from the cuffs, not when the black SUV's tires finally touched the asphalt of the private runway. Not when I climbed into the secure jet and briefed my team, pretending like nothing had happened just 30 minutes earlier. But somewhere over Virginia, while the rest of the flight team was prepping the next report, I closed the cabin door, sat alone in the jump seat, and let my shoulders fall, not out of sadness, out of sheer disbelief. My brother, Brandon, the same boy I once read bedtime stories to, had pulled a gun on me. Not out of necessity, not by mistake, but out of ego. Because to him, I'd become the very thing he hated most, a woman who outranked him, a woman who didn't need him. And that, I realized, wasn't something he ever could handle. The next morning, I filed the report myself. I kept it clinical, just the facts, the time, the badge number, the verbal threats, the unlawful detainment, and the most damning of all, the failure to verify identification from a known federal official on record. I didn't ask for special treatment, but I did request the footage, both body cam and dash cam, and I forwarded it directly to Internal Affairs. The fallout? Swift. Within 72 hours, Brandon was placed on administrative leave. By the end of the week, he was under investigation for gross misconduct and abuse of authority. The body cam footage didn't just back up my version of the story. It made it worse. The tone of his voice, the smirk, the casual way he snapped the cuff, sparking that your little FBI friends can't help you now. It went viral internally, leaked by someone in the state police office. By the time the week was over, federal channels were whispering about it. Elise Morgan's own brother cuffed her. He pointed a weapon at the FBI director. Was it political? Personal? Jealousy? None of them got the full story, but I didn't need them to, because the only people who truly needed to watch that footage were the same ones who'd ever doubted I belonged in this job. And trust me, they watched. Meanwhile, the family group chat, silent for months, lit up like a firework. My aunt, Elise, honey, was that real? Why would Brandon do that? My cousin, Jason, LMAO, your brother is toast. Just saw the clip on Reddit. And then my father, the same man who once told me I was too emotional to handle a career in law enforcement. The man who always sided with Brandon. He sent me one line. You embarrassed the whole family. Congratulations. I didn't reply because I had nothing left to explain to any of them. A week later, I received a formal apology letter from the state police commissioner. I also received word that Brandon had chosen to resign rather than face demotion and permanent record damage. He claimed it was to avoid media attention, but we both knew the truth. He couldn't survive the humiliation. He tried to flex authority on a woman who once held his hand during thunderstorms, and that woman now had the power to end his career with a sentence. And all I did was tell the truth. He called me 2 weeks later. I let it go to voicemail. His message was long. Shaky. Hey, Elise. I don't know if you'll ever talk to me again, but I messed up. I know I did. I let things get personal. I let my own issues get in the way. I'm not proud of what I did. I didn't realize how much I resented you. And I guess I never admitted how much I envied what you've done. He sniffed hard, voice cracking. Anyway, I'll leave you alone if that's what you want. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I deleted the message, not out of spite, but because forgiveness isn't always owed, especially when the person asking only realizes your value after they've tried to destroy it. 2 months later, I was invited to speak at a leadership summit hosted by federal law enforcement agencies. I walked on stage in a sharp black suit, heels clicking across the hardwood, the crowd of cadets and senior agents rising in applause. As I looked out into that sea of uniforms and faces, men and women who'd never question if I deserved my title, I smiled. Not because I needed their approval, but because I built something Brandon could never understand. Respect, earned, not handed. Later that evening, a young female agent approached me after the speech. Director Morgan. She asked, nervous. Yes. I just wanted to say thank you. I saw what happened, the video. The way you handled it, it gave a lot of us strength, especially the women coming up behind you. I reached out and shook her hand. You don't rise by playing small, I said. You rise by staying grounded and never letting them make you doubt your place. She smiled. I hope I can be half the leader you are one day. You will be, I said, and you'll be better. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like my past was something I had to hide. I felt like it was the reason I was exactly where I belonged, standing tall with my head high, even after being knocked down by my own blood. Because the truth is, power doesn't come from a badge. It comes from surviving everything that tried to silence you and speaking even louder.